is done for one primary reason. Human beings naturally have a mindset that is basically good. In order to manifest the murdering, thieving, reckless, warmongering, power-hungry personalities that are in the dark occult, you must traumatize the brain, causing synapses to be rewired from their natural order. By rewiring the synaptic pathways of the brain, different chemicals are released into the brain from the trauma that cause literal permanent brain damage until you start doing exercises to rewire your brain and repair the damage. Because what happens to the neural net in the brain, as you think and as you feel over a long-term, consistent basis, the neural net in your brain and the hormones and the chemicals in your body will form addictions and hardwired patterns. This is why so many people in the occult have problems with habitual depression, anger, drug abuse, alcoholism, because in dealing with the twisting of their synaptic pathways, they've turned to things to try to cope, usually drugs and alcohol. But I found in the people that I grew up with who are cults that many of them have substance abuse issues. And this is because of what they grew up in, primarily. Now, when my father and mother were first raising us, we lived in what I considered a normal development in the Philadelphia region. But when I was 3.5 years old, almost 4, my father and mother moved us to what I call an occult community. Around every major metropolitan area in the world, there are concentrations of dark occultists arrayed around major metropolitan areas in developments and communities. And to try to explain this, I will just say the Earth has a geomantic grid around it. This geomantic grid is called ley lines or dragon paths. It's the ancient name. It is the geodesic kind of like dome grid of the energy that naturally flows across this planet. What the Illuminati do and have done is place major cities along the major ley lines of the planet. For instance, London, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. are all located on one ley line, so that the energy that is being manifested in these cities can travel up and down these ley lines. And they can kind of like, it's almost like hardwiring together so they can share energy. Around each major metropolitan area, there will be towns and precincts and developments where instead of a normal mix of people where only 10% would be of the old religion, you will find concentrations of 70 to 85% of the old religion. And so they literally have communities where you grow up and most of the children you grow up with are involved in the cult trauma rituals that you're going through also. The reason that most metropolitan areas are circled with occult towns and developments is so that the energy of the traumatic abuse of children can be fed into the main ley line grid. I know this sounds very foo-foo-ish, but to people that study this stuff, I wanted to make that point. So I've made it. When my family moved to the higher concentration cult town, to the outside world, we looked like any other family. There was nothing different with us. We went to church on Sunday. We paid our taxes. We didn't do anything that would cause anyone to have any thoughts of anything abnormal with us. When would we go to church? And I just want to say some of the major church memories that I have with my parents going. We were Presbyterians, for whatever that would mean, considering what they really were. My parents were always close with the hierarchy of whatever church we went to the point where my mother would be with the pastor's wife constantly. The hierarchy of the church, you know, in regular Protestant Presbyterian churches, had no idea that my parents were blood-drinking, mass-murdering, satanic pedophiles. Just thought they were regular people, which makes me wonder about their spiritual discernment, to say the least. One time we were going to church, we passed the church sign that said Trinity Presbyterian Church. I looked at the sign as we drove in, and I asked my mother, "What's Trinity mean?" And my mother turned back in the car and looked at me, and she said, "That's us." When you study the history of religion and the corruption of spirituality on the planet Earth, you will find a thing known as the Babylonian Trinity. The Babylonian Trinity spans 7,000 years. And no matter what name that Trinity is given, the energy and the basic spirituality of it is the same. It doesn't matter if it's Semiramis, Nimrod. It doesn't matter if it's Isis and Horus. It's just whatever society that Trinity runs through, the spirituality of it is the same. I'm not going to go into that this show. I'm just going to try to get through some of the abuse memories that I have and try to explain some of the why. Fritz Springmeier's book on monarch mind control is a must-read if you want to understand more of this, because it's too much for me to deal with in a 2-hour program. So I'm going to lightly touch on some of the things I went through so we can actually get some calls and talk to people, and I can discuss with more some other things. Now, the first time I went into the church of the cult in the Illuminati town that we moved into, the front was just a normal store. No one would know that in the back of this store was a hidden church. It was a fairly large room. It had all the things that a satanic cult needed. It had the goat head Baphomet on the wall. It had the pit in the floor where people were lowered in mock human burial. There was the cattle prod in the corner. There was the car battery for electrical shocks to be given. And there were other devices of beating and torture. Children in an Illuminati family are never left in peace, not for one day. They are under constant attack, so the brain is skewed into a dark, mind-controlled mentality. What the Church of the Occult does is you go to meetings of the cult, and there'll be, let's say, 4 children there and their parents. There will be some sort of satanic ritual. There will be raping of all the children. There will be a time of physical and emotional abuse. There will be sexual favors given to different cult members by the children. My parents considered their children nothing but I would say that we existed for one reason and one reason only, to facilitate our parents' cult activities. We were given freely to other cult members for degradation, torture, humiliation, sexual favors, and it was good for my parents. They had 3 young boys that they could please the older, wealthy pedophiles with, and I'm sure they received a fair share of remuneration for what they put us through. In mind control, the personality has to be split into many different smaller pieces and programmed. This programming is done through torture. What your parents do in the first several years is they'll personally torture and play mind games with you and set the ball rolling synaptically in your mind. Once you go into the cult and work with the leaders of the cult, then you get into more serious satanic rituals. And this is usually from 3 years old to 6 years old. These rituals consist of murder, horrific abuse, forced cannibalism, the forced eating of feces, and hours and hours of electroshock torture and deprivation. Just basically, they will torture you till you say uncle, and then they will torture you some more and some more until you are out of your mind, terrorized, begging God to kill you just to stop the agony. What the Illuminati wish to do to their people, to make them as they are, is to get you to believe that you have been completely abandoned by your society, by God, and you have nothing but what they tell you. Now, one of the things, I'm looking at my notes and wondering where